All right, so we're going to look at lesson 4 from A Course in Miracles, and it's in review because they do kind of build on themselves. They do actually build on themselves, not kind of. Lesson 1 was nothing I see in this room, on the street, out this window, in this place means anything. So that was our practice of that one, was that question over and over again. Nothing I see in this room means anything. And then the next day we look at lesson 2, which said, I have given everything I see in this room, on this street, out this window, in this place, all of the meaning that it has for me. So all the meaning that it has for me. And then lesson 3 was, I do not understand anything I see in this room, out that window, on this street, in this place. So I do not understand anything I see was lesson 3. So lesson 4 kind of builds on this because you're start seeing a pattern here. Lesson 4, it says, these thoughts do not mean anything. These thoughts do not mean anything. So it's the first time we're switching now from what we're seeing visually to our thinking. So our thoughts from that respect. It says, these thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, out this window, in this place. So here's the lesson itself. It says, unlike the preceding ones, these exercises do not begin with the idea for the day. In this practice period, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. So think about what's crossing your mind first. Then apply the idea to them. If you already are aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as the subjects for this idea for this lesson. Do not, however, select only the thoughts you think are bad. So don't filter like we've talked about, just whatever it is. You will find, if you train yourself to look at your thoughts, that they represent such a mixture, in a sense, none of them can be called good or bad. So this is why they do not mean anything. Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, actually, that nothing is either good or bad, or it's our thinking that makes it so. And I always think about that when we're in this lesson. So it's that. So it goes on to say this, in selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is required. Do not be afraid to use, quote, good thoughts as well as, quote, bad. None of these represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. Let me say that again. None of them represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. The quote-unquote good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond, and the shadows make sight difficult. So the bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. You do not want either. So does that make sense? So that's what we're working on. So it keeps us from seeing what really is when we're looking at through the lens of good thoughts or bad thoughts. So this is a major exercise and will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different forms. The aim here is to train you in the first steps towards the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see things meaningless as outside you, and meaningful within. So meaningless outside you, meaningful when it's within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. In using your thoughts for the application of this idea for today, identify each thought by the central figure or event it contains. So again, specificity is required here. So I'm going to, as an example, I'm just going to give you a screenshot of this. Okay, so here's the lesson says this. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place. So that's the lesson to practice for today. And then to get specific about them, say this. This thought about blank does not mean anything. This thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like what I see in this room, on this street, out this window, in this place. So the specificity is about that thought itself. So make sure you're getting clear about that as you practice this and work on this exercise through the day. Now, You could also use the idea for a particular thought that you recognize as harmful. This practice is useful, but it is not a substitute for the more random procedures to be followed for the exercises. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You are too inexperienced as yet to avoid a tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied with these. So we want to keep them to a minimum, a minute or less. So further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, you may find the suspension of judgment in connection with the thoughts particularly difficult. We've talked a little bit about that already, but it's that suspending of the beliefs, not putting that filter on might be a little bit of a challenge for you. So stay with it and be mindful that could be. So I'm going to read this again. It says, further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, you may find the suspension of judgment in connection with thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat these exercises more than 3 or 4 times during the day. We will return to them later. So this is just the beginning of kind of peeling the onion. So stay with it. So that's our lesson for today. Lesson number 4. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, out on the street, out that window, in this place. And then the specificity line would be this one. You say, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this room, on the street, out this window, so on and so forth. So that's it. So that's lesson number 4. So again, practice it throughout the day, no more than 4 times, about a minute each time. Don't get too preoccupied with it. This is just the beginning of the practice. Thanks for being with us. I look forward to uncovering lesson 5 for you.